Hello, everybody. Welcome to another live stream on Professional Genealogist Reacts. On today's stream, we're going to be answering questions as usual. Like we've been doing in a lot of the recent streams, instead of just answering questions from Reddit, which, we will have that as in the background. I'm going to focus on questions that come through in the chat. Before I think we get into the regular stuff, I'll go ahead and say hello to everybody that's in here. Let some more people come in, and then I can kind of break down how we'll deal with everything today. So thank you everybody for joining, first of all. But let's get to the hellos. Okay, what am I doing? Here we go. All right, Tasha Carl, hello. Wonderful to have you. June, afternoon from New Hampshire. Carol, hi right here. All right, from right everywhere that may be. And Stig coming in from Tuscany, Italy, which, if I remember correctly, you're usually coming in from, it's somewhere in I want to say Oslo. You're usually coming in from Oslo, Norway, aren't you? Maybe I'm wrong. I don't know. But Tuscany is a great area. That's a place I've always wanted to visit, partially because I have family that comes from Livorno, which is in the Tuscany region. And then, yeah. All right. Sharon Phillips, good afternoon from New York. Thank you, Sharon. Hopefully you're having a good afternoon as well. Julia Joyce, good evening from Hampshire, England. So we have both the Hampshires, both Julia from Hampshire, England, and June from New Hampshire. Then we have Alan. Greetings from Madison. Wonderful to have you as always, Alan. Franchise 701. Good day, my friend. This is Stephen Millsap from North Dakota. Thank you. Thank you. Wonderful to have you, Stephen. And we have one of our Twitch representatives, Super Megamon 62. Hello. Thank you for joining. And a good point to say, for those who don't know, I'm streaming this on both YouTube and Twitch. So if you're following me on one and not the other, be sure to follow me on both. It helps me out. Where'd my cursor go? There we go. Jose Lopez 94. Am I late? Not at all. You are right on time. I just started within like the past minute or two. So yeah. So usually from Oslo, now on vacation. Sweet. I got it right. Apparently 26.6% Italian. Interesting. My heritage updates, I don't know. And speaking of which, Airy Rude Boy, have you talked about the My Heritage ethnicity updates recently? I didn't get mine, but others seem to have gotten updates. So on the last stream I did, we were talking about it because I think they had just come out kind of that day. And they've been coming out slowly for some people. I have a ton of kits that I manage on My Heritage. So far, only one of them have been updated. All the others have not. And they are a mixture of tests that were done directly through My Heritage as well as uploads. I've been trying to figure out if there's any rhyme or reason that who's been getting what. I haven't been able to notice it exactly if there has been, but yeah. This will be something hopefully we might be able to talk about today. And I know I saw a lot of people posting their My Heritage updates on the Reddit. I think I'd even talked about doing some sort of thing on there, and then I just never followed through with my mods and admins to ask them to do anything. So I think there's a few we might be able to go through, but I won't be revealing any of the ones that I have under my account that may be coming out in a video at some point. Majestic Bum 777, another one from Twitch. Ola from New York. Can we post our family's DNA results on the Reddit sub for review? When it comes to posting anything from your DNA results in the Reddit, make sure that you keep things privatized unless you have permission from that person. So like if you're posting matches, don't post match names, don't post email addresses. I don't know about posting, like if they have a family tree connected to their profile, that I think might even be among that, I think we'd rather be careful, safe than sorry sort of thing. And, really, people's privacy is a serious issue to take into consideration. So as long as you adhere to that, I know a lot of people will go and kind of, they'll edit stuff. And if you do accidentally slip up, I know my mods and admins, they're amazing at what they do. and they're constantly, letting people know, hey, you accidentally put this up, please take this down, edit it so that this is blurred out, and then you can re-upload. So that's a good way to do it. But yeah, you can definitely do it and the other thing too, if you get permission from that cousin, if you say, hey, I wanted to ask this thing to Jarrett Ross, the genie vlogger, are you cool with me including that? And they say yes, you're good. But thank you for asking. Lori Harrison, hello from Mississippi. Hello, Lori. Thank you for joining us. Carol, sorry, from California. Where'd you say you were from before? Oh, right here. Right here. That's right. Duran Childs, Greenwood, South Carolina. Thank you for joining. I recognize your name. And Peter Buvik, another recognizable name from Bergen, Norway. Hello, one of our Scandinavian representation. And then we have some, I don't know, would you call yourself Central European representation or more Western European? I don't know. Gregory Little from Augsburg, Germany. I'm actually not sure where Augsburg is at. I'll have to look that up. And then we have Nick Brokema, Guten Abend, Venut Groningen. Danke for joining. I don't know the word for joining. But Guten Abend, hoe gaat het? Hope you're doing very well. Always love to have my Dutchies in there, and especially because I'm trying to learn Dutch. So I think I'm at like 128 days straight on Duolingo right now, so not too bad. Carol, not happy with my heritage update on my DNA. I really feel they're wrong. Yeah, I think it's going to be interesting to see once it fully rolls out for everybody what everyone says. But I've kind of heard it both ways. But I think that's going to be expected no matter what. You're probably going to get some population groups that get really great results, and then others that the results may get worse than what they were from before. The hope always, though, is that everyone would get better. But, it's difficult. Yeah, Franchise 701. I get they need money, but I'm irritated that I've got the all access family plan for Ancestry. They want another $10 for some awesome tools, but that only works on your account, but not the shared account. Yeah, I think a big conversation that's been going on amongst a lot of genealogists has been how a lot of the different websites are kind of starting to try to find every little way they can get a little bit more money coming in, which, I mean, it makes sense, you need to survive and all of that. But then I think there's also a question when you start dealing with some of these companies that are now, owned by corporations that are publicly traded. And so it's, it gets into the area of just like, what's the point that's going to be too much, where it's like kind of like streaming services now, how kind of started with just a few and then more and more and more. And next thing you know, nowadays it's like everything's got a streaming subscription for this and that. And, it's just so much harder. So I think that's kind of the same thing, but the websites are doing themselves. So I don't know. But as to the question, is it worth it? In my opinion, especially if you are managing multiple profiles on your Ancestry account and doing pretty in-depth DNA matching, yes. The shared matches, the ability to see how much each of your matches are sharing with each other, it's literally one of those things that little bit of information could be what you need to get over that hump or that brick wall that you've been trying to get over. So like for me, as soon as they released that on Ancestry and I got that, I was able to quickly solve 2 brick walls in my family tree that I thought I'd be able to solve had I had that information, because of testers on Ancestry who wouldn't really get back but had some info up. And then I was able to solve that within a day. So a lot of times it's just getting that information. So I think it's worth it. I know I've heard a lot of genealogists talk about, since it's only a $10 a month thing, basically, do a month and then, get as much information as you can. And if you feel like, you still need to keep it up so you can keep getting that information, then do that. But otherwise, then just cancel it. And then just every once in a while when you need it, add it on. Now, I will say now that I've been having Pro Tools, because I didn't want to get it before because it was like, I really didn't see any major benefit to it. Now that I have it, there are some useful things to it because it's a lot of extra stuff for the family tree, but it's not anything like amazingly useful. It's really just, it's a lot of really good tools to keep your tree as clean as possible. So like it was able to it allowed me to identify a bunch of duplicates in the ancestry tree I had that I didn't realize was there. It allowed me to actually find some errors that I didn't realize was there that were like, oh, that I need to fix that. And I actually ended up being able to figure it out. And yeah. So those parts I don't know, but if it's the DNA matching, I think it's worth at least doing a month. Okay. Mom Pathulski, hi from Idaho. Wonderful to have you as always. Alan from Augsburg, Bavaria. We have Zakia El Boutahiri. Hello from the Netherlands. Hello. Loud Dude Mapping. Hi from North Dakota. Hello. Sophia Kilkis. Hi from Greece. Hello. And then let's see. Julia Joyce. I have 21% Sweden DNA. I've done an extensive family tree with no gaps and birth, marriage, death records back to 1600s. All relatives in tree from British Isles. Fourth cousin matches from Sweden with someone lying. I mean, always consider that it might not be that you descend from Sweden, but that you have relatives that went to Sweden. And think about, fourth cousin distance. That's what you're sharing third great grandparents. And, for a lot of people, third great grandparents are going to be born early to mid 1800s. So basically you'd be looking at, maybe like a second great grandfather who had some siblings who went to Sweden in the 1800s and then had a bunch of children. And now you have relatives that way. Now, granted, fourth cousin matches, fourth cousin just being the estimation they're giving you. So you'll want to look at how many centimorgans you're actually matching and then see how many possibilities there are. And you may be able to get a better idea that might be a little closer than fourth cousin or might even be more distant than fourth cousin. So, whether someone's lying, that's, that'll take a lot more to figure out, but it's certainly a possibility, but you don't want to, it's not the only possibility right now. So it's not, you don't want to like make that be the main thing. But if you feel like that might be the main thing, then, research towards it. But I say one thing I always like to do when I'm trying to research stuff, try to think of ways you could disprove it. Like one of the quick things I often do when I'm trying to find records on people and I find somebody in an area that I wasn't expecting them, I then look in that area to see were there people living in that area with that same name at a time when I know that person wouldn't have been there. And if that happens, then you quickly have made a case that you might be wrong and that this person is the person you think it is. So kind of that line of thinking of, okay, if I'm wrong, what would be happening? Well, if I'm wrong, then this person must be a whole separate person. So we would thus then be able to find records on that said person. Enrique de Andrade Reyes. I'm sorry, I know I pronounce it. Enrique de Andrade Reyes. Andrade. I'm sorry. So, from Sao Paulo, Brazil. Thank you for joining. Wonderful to have you as always. Gazillion PT, Olaf from Portugal. Thank you for joining. Rob, hello. Another one of the Dutchies. Ook Netherlands. Yeah. Ook Nederlander. Yeah, and then I did see this question. Is TellMeGen's DNA matching platform reliable? I haven't really used TellMeGen. I don't know if they always had the DNA matching. I think, is this the company that I know I learned recently there was a company that was doing DNA matching that I didn't think they were. So I really don't know. The thing is if they do any sort of relatives matching, usually that's kind of a straightforward science. It's basically, are you finding segments of DNA that are lining up? And, so that would be pretty straightforward. I'm looking through their website. I know I'm not showing it right now. Okay, DNA Connect. They do have Connect. All right, let's share my screen. So DNA connect with people through your DNA, expand your world. Ugh, my allergies are killing me today. Social network based on genetics. How do we search for your genetic family? So, okay. Yeah. Interesting way to advertise this, but yeah. Free of charge. So, I mean, I imagine if there's people in this database and they mount you, I would imagine that it's reliable. I don't know 100%. I've never used it, but just based on, what they're saying, if they're saying that they're doing this matching, it looks like the pretty standard relative matching for these sites. So I may need to try it because one of the things I always say with all these sites is unless I see a genealogical viability with it, I don't really put that much time or effort into it because my focus is on the genealogy side. So now that Tell Me Gen, they have this DNA Connect option, I'll have to see if, give it a shot, see how useful it is. So yeah, interesting. Okay. Okay, Jose, I found out that if one of my second cousins has kids, then they'll be my third cousins. Is that true based on what I was reading online once? Well, your second cousin's kids will be your second cousins once removed. But your second cousin's kids will be third cousins to your kids. So, uh, you know, maybe that's what they were saying. Or it's possible that with some people they kind of word it oddly, and it may be I don't know. Sometimes people I think also round the relationship distance. So if you get second cousin once removed, some people will just be like, oh, third cousin, even though it's not really a third cousin. So maybe it was something like that. So I don't know, reading online once that, online where, some random dude on Facebook or Twitter or something, or I don't know. Rob, Vanut, UK. Okay. Not in the Netherlands this week. Weeping Scorpion. Hello, everyone. Hope everyone is doing great. Thank you for joining. Wonderful to have you as always. I'm doing pretty good, other than my allergies and being tired, but hey, not too bad. Not too shabby. Yeah, Tell Me Gen is mainly for health related traits. DNA connecting matching is not reliable. I think I've used it. Yeah, I mean, the thing with these databases is not even necessarily as much worrying about the reliability, but worrying about the size of the database. Because if it's a small database, it's really doubtful that you're going to get useful matches. That's one of the reasons why Ancestry is such a beloved database, is because they have the largest number of testers. So you have the largest chance of, if you test with one company, Ancestry will have the largest chance that you'll find a match. Now, depending on where you come from or what type of population group you come from, that could vary. So, like for a lot of people, MyHeritage sometimes ends up being a better option because even though Ancestry is such a large database, the majority of the testers are from the US, Canada, the UK, Australia, New Zealand. And that's literally like the large majority of the people. I mean, I think there's a few also South Africa, basically the English speaking world in a sense. And then with MyHeritage, they have a lot more Eastern Europeans and Central Europeans and just kind of widely non-English speaking European countries. So not that they don't all, can speak English, but just, the countries where it's not their main language. And like another example is a lot of South Americans are on MyHeritage. So if you're looking for something like that, you may end up being better off with MyHeritage. But with something like Tell Me Gen being, I know it's been around for a while, and I remember looking into it and being like, yeah, it's not something I'm going to do. No genealogical viability for me. But then after, seeing this, I imagine this is just beginning, or at least even if it's a year old, I don't know how many people are probably going to be in that database. It's probably going to be a lot smaller than any of the other databases. and the majority of the people that are going to be in this database are probably going to already be in a lot of the other databases as well. Just because, I don't think you buy the test through them. Do you? You actually, okay, it is actual, like, you test with them. Okay, yeah, interesting. I don't know. I will say this is a possible company to be on the lookout for if they, they're selling their own tests, they're doing DNA matching. It's just a matter of time before they may possibly come out with something that completely changes the game. That's what's happened with every single one of the big sites that's out there. That's how they got big, is that they basically they came out and did something that was kind of unique or different from the others. So, Family Tree DNA was really the first one to really come out with this type of DNA testing stuff. Really early on with Y-DNA testing, but then like them and 23andMe were basically kind of the first in the field. And so that's how they got big. Then with Ancestry, when they came into it, which I want to say was like 2012, 2013, they just had such a large fan base already, or a large amount of people are using them, that once they rolled out their DNA, they just instantly had a huge database because they were already a trustworthy name in the community. And then with MyHeritage, they really took the step of getting tools. So MyHeritage, you have the auto cluster as part of their tools, and they have the theory of relativity and other stuff that they've implemented. Some of which some of the other sites have something similar, some which don't. And then the next company that started to make waves was Living DNA, which it still isn't huge, but their whole thing was going a hardcore into the admixture and trying to make that as granular as possible. So people who live in the UK or come from Ancestry within, the UK or Northwestern Europe and Africa and other places, you get a much more nuanced breakdown, granular breakdown of your ancestry than you do with other companies. So instead of, broadly Northwestern Europe or even just England, you're going to get Cornish, and you're going to get very specific, areas, as opposed to, just Southern England or something like that. Yeah. So basically what I'm saying is, if TellMeGen figured out something that was unique that would bring all of the genealogists over, create a product that genealogists would want to use because it's going to be the only one that actually helps them with what they need, then they're going to be able to make waves. I'm sorry, my I was playing around with my screen and now it's all wacky. Oh, I just realized I was sharing that weird. That's part of why. Okay, I get it. All right, well, let's keep going through this stuff. All right. Nicole Ann, I got my whole genome sequence back from Nebula, and it got transferred to YFIL and got my maternal haplogroup. It is X2BA asterisk from what I can figure out. 2 times is a rare haplogroup. I'm clueless on how to understand. Yeah, interesting. Yeah, let's see, X2BA. So, when it comes to the haplogroup part, I think it's really just kind of giving you like a deep family view of stuff. The main thing is to look at your matches on YFIL, which most of the people that you're going to find in there are going to be your matches. So I'm guessing this is you then, if this is the newest one you just uploaded. So I need to close that out. Okay. So you have these different people: USA, Ireland, Tunisia. So you're not really getting much information on where. So looking at it, it's definitely a lot of European, but then also a decent amount of North African with this Morocco, Tunisia. But then at the same time, Oh, whoops, there we go. But at the same time, I am also noticing this Italian and Spanish and Portuguese, which, you know, that fits really well with North African results. So it's Switzerland kind of around there. So very interesting. I honestly wouldn't know exactly how to read it either. The thing that I would suggest is basically doing your looking at your matches and seeing which ones are the closest ones, and do you notice anything similar from there. But I know a lot of people have a lot of difficulty getting much out of the mitochondrial matching as much as they do with Y matching, just because the mutation rate makes it a lot harder to actually figure out something genealogically useful. So basically, with Y DNA testing, if you do the high end SNP testing, you could actually figure out how you're related to people within a pretty good time range, maybe 100 years or so, a couple of 100 years. And then with mitochondrial, you get a good match that's like a zero genetic distance, and it could be like, well, we could be related within the past 1,000 years or so. So, I think that's the biggest difficulty with it. Yeah. Okay, let's see. Okay, I see we've got a lot of people jumping in the chat. I just noticed I'm way up there. So this is probably a good time, since we have a lot of people here, to kind of just break down the deal with the questions. I'll be answering questions from the chat. So if you have questions, just put it in chat. I can't guarantee I will be getting everybody's question, just because, a lot of people in here, it goes kind of quick. But if you do a super chat, super sticker thing, I do guarantee I will answer those. And if you do that, I do greatly appreciate it, because it helps support me and the channel and allows me to do these streams. Otherwise, if it doesn't work out, then I got to go back and get a job again. Or at least I can't focus as much on streaming. But either way, if I don't answer your question, you don't want to pay to have it answered, just keep asking it if I don't get to it. But I do guarantee if I get one of those, I'll answer it. The super chats, part of it being that it sticks up at the top, so I can actually see where it is. But otherwise, if we hit a lull for some reason, which I don't think we will, these streams have been going really well. I have a lot of other stuff on Reddit that we can look at for both my heritage results, some new ones, and then some of the different questions and stuff, and maybe even some memes. So yeah, so that's how we'll do it today. And yeah, so okay, so getting back, I don't know where I was. Where was all right? Let me go see. All right. We'll start here. Charlie just stands out. Evening, Charlie. Thank you for joining. Good spot to say. If you're not on the Discord, please join our Discord. Charlie, one of our wonderful mods who's been helping me out all the time. Probably notice him here all the time. Go check out the Discord. Hello, Sandy from North Carolina. Thank you for joining. Enable, disabled. Good late afternoon. Hello, hello. Let's see, Nicole. I've not figured out how to interpret / use YFull. Do you have a video? Yes, that is me. I have a video. If you look at my Nebula whole genome sequence video, I talk a bit about YFull, but I don't go like super in depth into it. But I don't know if there might be others out there who, I feel like I've seen other stuff talking about YFull. At least you'll probably be able to find blogs. Genealogists that are really into like the in-depth DNA stuff really love blogs. You'll find a lot of in-depth stuff in some of those blogs. All right, Loud Dude Mapping. I'm just a German from Russia. I get this idea from when my third great grandparents and my fourth great grandparents came from German settlements in modern day Ukraine, came over to New York. Okay, interesting. So Germans in Russia, but if it's in modern day Ukraine, then that wouldn't be the Volga Germans, because the Volga River is much, much further, east than Ukraine. So let's pull up a map. Let's pull up a map. So here we have present day Ukraine, and then here we have the Volga River. So I think it was, I'm trying to remember because there's like a major section of it that I think is like the larger part of the settlements. I want to say it was kind of here-ish. But like, so these would be the Volga Germans, called that because Germans who settled in Russia around the Volga River. So like, you know, the place I'm looking for is Katharinenstadt, which is the town where Mr. Beast's ancestor, or not Mr. Beast, Mr. Beat's ancestors came from, somewhere around there. But if so, like I'm saying, you know, if it's present day Ukraine, that's interesting. So, but German settlements in modern day Ukraine came over to New York. Interesting. All right, Dan Edwards. I have 3 identical mitochondrial matches at FTDNA. They're no use to solving my brick wall great 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 grandmother's birth family. Yeah, I have so many identical mitochondrial matches for me, and I had my dad do mitochondrial DNA tests, so I have both that line and his line. And then because I've had all these other cousins test, I have a lot of mitochondrial lines on a lot of my family lines, and I have yet to use one to help me solve any brick wall. Now I've used Y-DNA multiple times to help me solve a lot of those brick walls. Reggie Wolf, my ancestry DNA showed Eastern European Roma 5%. How far back did I have a Roma ancestor? Well, as I talk about all the time with this, the first thing is the assumptions that we need to make when discussing it. First, at 5%, with the assumption being that it's coming from one recent ancestor and not multiple recent or multiple distant ancestors, that's how we figure it out. So when I say that, assuming, you know, from one ancestor, we're assuming that it's just one ancestor that's making up that 5% that's a recent one. Okay, so if you notice, I put that banner up on the bottom that has these percentages to it, and that's the amount of percentage we expect to get from a certain ancestor. And so that's how you figure this out. So at 5%, we're looking at right between second great grandparents and third great grandparents. So when we look at that, what we need to then think of is that, okay, if it's coming from one recent ancestor, it could be as close as a second great grandparent, could be as distant as maybe a third or a fourth great grandparent. So what you want to do is build out your family tree and identify all of your second great grandparents. And once you've done that, and if you've been able to look at each one of their story and be able to be like, yeah, nothing looks like they'd be Roma, then get to the next generation, go through every single one. And the difficulty with this is, you know, it's really easy to get back that far and have one ancestor that's a complete mystery. And when that happens, while you can't conclusively say it's this ancestor, sometimes it might be. But then for a lot of people like myself, you know, I know all of my great grandparents, but then I only know 14 out of my 16 second great grandparents. So there's 2 great grandparents on my family that, you know, great grandparent 6.25%. That means that that great grandmother of mine, even though I kind of think I know where she's from, it's possible that could be completely wrong, and you know, she could be something completely different. Now we're pretty sure that it's not, because like I said, mitochondrial DNA testing through different sites. But that's kind of what you're dealing with. So with 5%, you know, my guess is that second, third great grandparent, you know, is really where you're going to focus. You could always think of it as a possibility of a fourth great grandparent, because remember, DNA recombination is random, and sometimes you can get very small percentages of DNA from certain ancestors, and others you might get very large percentages of DNA. So the example I always like to use is, you know, with your parents, you're going to get 50% from one parent, 50% from the other, because they're the ones where the meiosis happens, and it, you know, it all splits and it 50%. But then the DNA that you're getting from your grandparents you could have 20% from your grandpa and 30% from your grandma. And that's going to skew everything much more towards your grandmother's ancestry for how you're matching everything. So hopefully that's helpful. I guess one other thing to add to that being how far back do you have to go? If assuming that you're about my age, or at least my generation, I'm a millennial, born in the 80s. So second great grandparents for a lot of people in my generation are going to be born mid 1800s, maybe late 1800s. And then third great grandparents are going to be like mid to early 1800s when they're born. So you're looking at ancestors largely that lived their lives in the 1800s, maybe the early 1900s a little bit. So not too far back, honestly. Okay, let's continue. Okay. Apparatchik, that Jewish guy in the chat. Why don't DNA services identify Mizrahi or Sephardic DNA well? They seem to only be able to identify Ashkenazi. Yeah, this is something I've discussed in a few videos. And it comes down to kind of a few things. The first major thing is that while there is an ability to slightly distinguish Mizrahi and or Mizrahi and Ashkenazi and Sephardi in DNA. When it comes to the way that the autosomal DNA is read, and when it comes to autosomal DNA and reading that to come up with these admixtures, it's very hard to distinguish between them. And that's largely in part because of how they have a lot of ancestry together, as well as, while these Jewish communities weren't, completely separated from each other, or while they were largely separated from each other is what I'm trying to say, they weren't completely separated from each other. And there was some flow in and out that, happened throughout the centuries between the various groups. I think a big thing a lot of people know about is how, sometimes it's really hard to tell Mizrahi from Sephardi, and the label can kind of jump back and forth between how that happens. But the other part of it is just also a difficulty in having succinct communities to test. And what I mean by that is large amounts of people where all of their known grandparents were from a specific community. And it's that kind of testing that allows them to really come up with very distinguished and reliable ways of separating groups. So similar to how with Northwestern Europeans, it's this difficult hodgepodge of, Scottish versus Irish versus English versus Welsh. And it's very similar in the Jewish world. The difference is with the, English and the Scottish and the Irish and the Welsh, there are a lot of testers for that. And so, there is kind of some better idea that gives the companies a little bit more confidence in breaking those down into separate groups, but not always. And it's the same thing with Jewish, where you're dealing with these various groups that, even though they're geographically spread out a lot more, they have so much common ties and flow together as well, coming from a similar ancestry, that it makes it very difficult. And to be able to really figure that out, you'd have to get very succinct groups. So like for a lot of the Sephardic communities, the companies that do read Sephardic, they're actually reading more of an Eastern Sephardic community, which, while it's not super different than the Western Sephardic and North African Sephardic communities, there was hundreds of years of separation, which would have allowed for just a little bit of a variation based on the population. So like the Eastern Sephardic communities really dating back to like the 1300s, Western Sephardic communities dating back to 1500s. And, there was some mixing in between, but with those Sephardic readings, it leans much more towards the Eastern Sephardic communities. But for the Western Sephardic communities, they were so decimated in the Holocaust and the Shoah that it's very hard to find people that have for purely Sephardic ancestors. And then on top of that, there was, even into present day, there was mixing between the various groups, Ashkenazi, Sephardi, and Mizrahi. I'm an example of that. I descend from both Sephardi and Ashkenazi. And so it can be a difficult thing. I think with time, they will be able to do it much better. But right now, it's just not in a place that they've been able to confidently do that. And that's one of the reasons why a lot of the studies that are really focusing in depth on the Jewish population groups, they're actually focusing more on Y DNA. And that's where they're really getting a lot of the best stuff. So, yeah. Okay. I feel like I talk about that topic all the time. But it's a common topic. Okay. So I'm just reading through some of these. Okay, let's see. Rob, so for the Coheren der Capitale Impositi, then 1585. Okay. I don't know. I don't think I know Dutch just well enough to fully understand what you're saying. Especially, are you talking about it like is this an inventory of records, I'm guessing? Okay, yeah, the archive inventory 661A. Okay. I think that's what you're saying. I'll look out for yeah, there's a lot of, if it's the Amsterdam archives, there's so much stuff that they have. Okay. Let's get a Twitch question up. Majestic Bum 777. If you ever see this or can get it to my maternal grandparents, got Moroccan regions on 23andMe. I mentioned a few weeks ago about Moroccan Sephardi matches in Israel. Do we have Moroccan Sephardi ancestry combined with Converso? I posted their results. I'm not sure I completely get the question. I remember you had your maternal grandmother got the Moroccan result. I kind of remember that because I think this was 2 weeks ago, obviously on the last time we did the question stream. Do we have Moroccan Sephardi ancestry combined with Converso? Now, whether or not you actually have that, I couldn't say conclusively. But what I can say is that there were a lot of Western Sephardic people who went to Morocco, and the Western Sephardic Jews were the ones who were conversos. Basically, what happened was that Spain did the Alhambra Decree 1492. The Jews had 4 months to either leave or convert, or if they were still there and didn't convert, they would have died. And so a lot of Jews went to Portugal because they didn't have an inquisition at the time. Then Portugal enacted their own inquisition years later because they wanted to, have a marriage between their royal family and the Spanish royal family. And so to do that, they had to do their own inquisition. And with that inquisition, the Jews weren't allowed to leave. So Spain, they were given 4 months to leave or convert. Portugal, they weren't given that. And so all the Jews that had gone to Portugal then had to convert, and they basically had to over time leave. And so a lot of the Jews that all those Jews that left Portugal after that inquisition, those are the Jews that make up what we know as the Western Sephardic diaspora. And a large amount of those went to Morocco. And in fact, one line of my family that's from that side, the Espinoza family, went to Zaleh, Morocco. And then I have some other family lines that trace to Marrakesh. And then also the Livorno side of my family, that line, there's multiple lines that trace into Tunisia in North Africa. So, I know we're not saying Morocco, but when you're kind of saying North Africa, there is a lot of population flow, obviously, even though we're talking different sides of North Africa. We got the map up, so why don't we just look at it? So we've got Morocco over here. Saleh, where is Saleh? I always thought Saleh's like, missing it. I don't see it. Don't see it. Because I thought it's like one of the places on the coast. I don't know. Either way, okay. So Morocco's here, Tunisia's over here. So they're kind of the different sides, but there's going to obviously be a lot of population flow. But you can see why it makes so much sense. Spain, Portugal over here, and then here, what family is tied into Tunisia? The family that's from Livorno, Italy, right here. So you can see once you start talking about all of these different connections, why when you look at the admixtures, there's so much confusion that people have. Because think about for the majority of people, how much they know about their family. And I say it all the time, it's rare for me to find people where they know their great-grandparents' names, let alone all of their great-grandparents' names, and even more further than that. And for most people, their great-grandparents were born in the 1900s. I guess that's not true. For most people, their great-grandparents were probably born in the late 1800s or so, at least of my age. So that means that most people don't know their family history before the late 1800s unless they've put in the time. And even then, they only know some lines. We learned about this one line that came from here or that or there, whatever, but it's only one line of your family. Yeah. All right. Ba, 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 ba. Okay, Mike L. What would be a telling sign that a DNA match is endogamous? There's a few telling signs. The easiest telling sign is if you have very close relatives from both sides of your family tested and they are matching this person. Well, actually, no. I guess that's more of just showing that it's coming from an endogamous population, but that is part of the indication. Like if you have both of your parents tested, let's say, and you find a match and you compare it to both of your parents, if both of your parents are matching this match at less than you're matching them, definitely, or not definitely, but very, very, very likely an endogamous match. Another way to tell with the endogamous match without comparing anything is endogamous matches are often matches that look a lot closer of a DNA relative than they truly are, because endogamous matches are still going to be related to you for the most part. It's just instead of maybe being a third or fourth or fifth cousin, their closest relation to you is like a ninth or a 10th cousin. It's just that your 9th, 10th, 11th cousins so many different ways that it makes it look a lot closer. And what that means is that it's a lot of small segments, because remember, the more distant related you are, the smaller amount of DNA you're going to share, which means the smaller the segment. But if you're related distantly in multiple ways, that means it's a lot of small segments added up. This is one of the reasons why when we do endogamous DNA matching and go through those matches to determine what's the most useful match to look into, we focus on the segments, because large segments indicate that it's a closer relationship than a further away relationship. So if you see a match that's like 100 centimorgan match, but you look at the segments and your largest segment is 8 centimorgans, even though that's a large total amount of DNA shared, it's a very small largest segment, meaning all of the segments are very small, and thus a likely endogamous match. So hopefully that's helpful. Okay, let's jump around here. Let me check what we got going on. Okay. Saleh is by Rabat. Okay, it is on the coast. That's what I thought. Oh, there it is. Okay. Yeah, because I was like, I know it's on the coast somewhere around here. I thought so. Actually, part of you can actually learn all about this line of my family because John Berman from CNN, um, he's a descendant of the family as well, and they did a whole. I did a reaction to this video, but they did like a whole thing with him, and he and I descend from the same Espinoza family. He thought it would be like the Baruch Espinoza family, but it's actually a different family. Both living in the same community. But yeah, so you can go and watch the reaction I did to that video if you want. I actually knew all of my great grandparents. The first of my greats died when I was 4, and the last one died when I was in my 30s. Wow. Yeah, I mean that's very lucky. I felt extremely lucky for knowing 2 of my great grandmothers, but I never met a single one of my grandfathers. All of my grandfathers died before I was born, but I knew both of my grandmothers and 2 of my great grandmothers, both my maternal great grandmothers. Interestingly enough. Endogamy, how fun. Yes, exactly. So I'm hardwired in now, so it's good when it gives me the Wi-Fi low signal. It's like, no, that's my internet not doing well, apparently. AT&T. Okay, Alan. I have a MyHeritage match with a 21-year-old in a near relative class. However, they are probably a 5th cousin in Norway. I'm cousin of both of their parents. Interesting. Yeah. So what you'll want to do is compare how much are you matching the parents versus this 5th cousin. And then that'll kind of give you an idea of I guess you're looking at there's 2 main options right now that you're trying to decipher. One option is this person actually a 5th cousin to you and thus you should find a shared 4th great grandparent or so, or meaning or sorry a 4th great grandparent, which would be through one parent, or is this someone where they're a distant cousin to you related at least 2 ways through both parents? So, the way that would tell obviously is, let's say you're matching this person as a 50 centimorgan match. And then you look at both of your parents, and one of your parents is matching them at a 20 centimorgan match, and the other one's matching them at a 75 centimorgan match. That one, I think I would be not very confident, but I would say somewhat confident in saying that the parent that has this 70 whatever centimorgan match, that's likely where it's going to be related through. And the other parent matching, it's just kind of maybe not an anomaly. Maybe they are related to you distantly through that parent as well. But being that you have one parent matching higher than you did, 50 centimorgans versus 70 whatever, that's indicating that it's probably going to be through that parent, and that'll be closer that way. But then let's say that you're testing at 50 centimorgans, and then both your parents test, and mom matches at 30 centimorgans, dad matches at 35 centimorgans. Now you're looking at what seems to be an endogamous match. And instead of this person being a 5th cousin to you through one of your parents, instead they're a 7th or 8th, or, who knows what they are, through both your mom, and then a 7th or 8th or whatever through your dad as well. And then possibly then consider, what if they're also related through each one of your grandparents, through have a relation to them. And that's kind of the deal with endogamy, is it's you end up being related to all of the other people within that same population group through almost every single one of your family lines, but it's just very distantly that you're related to them all. Can you do an ancestry DNA test using a hair sample or 3 or 3 hair samples? So at the moment, the only way to do consumer, or for the consumer to do hair testing, is you have to go through a private lab that does that. And I believe you have to have a root on the hair for that testing. So like I don't know if To the Letter DNA or Keepsake DNA do that hair testing. They do artifact testing. You might be able to contact them and see would they be able to do hair testing. But more than likely, if they do hair, they do. Okay. You'll need to talk to them and basically figure out, is it worthwhile to do the cost? Because you're going to have to pay a lot of money. It's not cheap. And then you have to, you have to send all the stuff. And then if there's a chance that it might not work out. Now, let's say you have hair that does not have roots on it, rootless hair. Let's make this bigger. There we go. Let's say you have rootless hair. That testing is now viable, but I don't know if it's available for the consumer. So that might be something where you're going to have to find a lab that does that testing and convince them to allow you to do it. But if it's not through a consumer grade lab, you're probably going to be looking at like thousands of dollars to run it, with the possibility of nothing coming out of that. So hopefully hopefully that's helpful. So yeah, technically possible, difficult, but my guess is if you do have hair that you really want to get tested and you only have a little bit of it, I think it'd be better to wait and see this artifact testing for consumers to get a lot better. That would be my suggestion. But if you have a lot of it to use and try, and money's no issue, go for it. I know, I have heard people have gotten viable results through doing stuff like this. How many do we have? Okay, that's not too many. All right. Which DNA test do you recommend for Moroccans? I don't know. Whenever I recommend a DNA test, I'm always recommending this with the mindset of the genealogy. So if you're looking at it in terms of, I want an admixture breakdown of the percentages and all of that, this answer is not going to be as helpful. But my suggestion probably would be MyHeritage, just because MyHeritage has the largest known non-English speaking database for testing. So if you're from Morocco and you want to find matches who are also from Morocco, more than likely you're going to find the majority of them on MyHeritage. The next best thing, or what I think a lot of people would actually suggest as your testing route, would be to test with Ancestry DNA, because they're the largest database, not necessarily the largest representation worldwide, but they do have the largest number of people in their database. So testing through there, and then you can actually upload that DNA. You download the raw results, then upload it to other sites, including MyHeritage, where you can then get all of the other testing. So that's like the common suggestion that most genealogists give. Okay. Let's see. Yeah, so like I said, there is rootless hair testing available. Basically, the history of it was they originally thought you could only get mitochondrial DNA out of rootless hair, and that you couldn't get what's known as nuclear DNA, the DNA that we use for autosomal testing and Y testing and whatnot. And then recently, they've figured out ways to do that. But it's still in the early stages where, I mean, you have a lot of professional labs and private labs and forensic labs, and there's a lot of overlap between all those who are just getting this testing on board. And I think it's going to be a few years at least before it becomes much more perfected, and then we start seeing it hitting a point where we might actually see it get to the consumer market. Okay. Andrea Brown, love your videos. Thank you. Do you have any suggestions for researching Jewish Jamaican heritage? Both parents have passed. Maternal family refuses testing. Dad's maternal family doesn't have Jewish DNA. Well, I mean, for Jewish Jamaican heritage, a lot of the research that I know is pretty similar to regular researching for Jamaica. Yeah, go ahead. And the site that I always suggest, apparently it's not secure. That's not good to know. Is JamaicanFamilySearch.com. So JamaicanFamilySearch.com, been around for many, many years. Not the same as FamilySearch.org, the LDS website. This is its own thing, but lots of records in here, and even more so, they have a lot of Jewish records specifically. And the records are a pretty good place to start. So, like, for me, I have a lot of listed in here. So, like, I talk about Nunes Vaz all the time. So, in Jamaica, the way they did the surnames, they focused it kind of like a traditional Spanish and Portuguese naming style. So instead of every generation being Nunes Vaz, Nunes Vaz, Nunes Vaz, one generation would be Nunes Vaz. They'd marry someone, Enriquez Capriles, and then the next generation would be Vaz Capriles, stuff like that. So for a lot of the families, they end up just going with the paternal surname as the one they include. So here we see Vaz, but then you can even see somewhere it's the Nunes is up over here, and it's But yeah, so there is a good amount available, both Sephardi and Ashkenazi. Now there's limitations to this, and I think there's other stuff out there as well. But if you're just getting started, this is a great place to start, in my opinion. Just because that wasn't secure, I wanted to close it. Okay. Watching from a pontoon right now. So cool. Well, thank you for joining from your pontoon, Maven. Thank you. Michael, thank you. Your explanation was very helpful. Last question from me. What strategies would you use to try and tackle adoptions/MPEs in the late 1800s/early 1900s? Now, with that, it gets a little bit more difficult, because if it's an NPE around that time, I'm guessing that means that you're talking about a grandparent or a great-grandparent where you believe that one of their parents is not truly their parent. And the biggest trick to this is getting multiple DNA testers within the family. And you can utilize that in multiple ways. Now, the first off thing to focus on is getting the oldest generation to test. So if this is through one specific parent and both of your parents are alive and haven't tested yet, get that parent to test, because the closer they are to that ancestry, the better results you're going to get with DNA matching. The other thing is to get multiple cousins from that side to match. So let's say or do DNA testing. So let's say it's a grandparent of yours that you're looking at this into. Well, in that case, you'll want to get first cousins, other descendants of that grandparent to test. And then that's going to give you a lot more availability to figure things out. Now, the other thing is if it's a grandparent and you have multiple siblings, you can do the advanced DNA testing method of getting your multiple siblings to test and then doing visual phasing. Because visual phasing is where you take your DNA, compare it to your siblings, and there's this process you go through by comparing it that allows you to decipher what parts of each chromosome you're inheriting from which grandparent. So if you're trying to figure out who's grandpa's parents and you visual phase it to figure out what DNA strands of your chromosomes coming from that grandpa, that means that you'll be able to compare every single DNA match in your list to see who has a chromosome on that exact same spot. Now, to do this, you can't go through Ancestry, because Ancestry does not have a DNA. Why can't I think of what it's called? I keep wanting to call it a DNA recombiner, but that's not what it's called. It's a chromosome browser, a DNA chromosome browser. So because they don't have one where you can see when you look at a match how you're matching them, you can't do it. So you have to do that through other sites. And then to do the visual phasing, you need to do it through GEDmatch. And but those are things that I would highly suggest looking into if you have not done that yet. Because when you're looking at that late 1800s, early 1900s, that's the difficulty is just, it's further back in time in your family ancestry, and so it's a little bit harder to figure out which matches are going to come from that family. Okay. This is a question I have no idea how to answer. How big should a group be to reduce problems of inbreeding sufficiently? I don't know. I feel like that'd be something a geneticist could answer. That's not something I would know. Sorry. All right, let's see. Do we have any questions here? Hello, Bryce. Thank you for joining. Yeah, I see a lot of comments in between everyone, so maybe a good time. I've been going over an hour. Okay, maybe a good time. Let's look at some new MyHeritage results. So I'd seen a lot of people posting their new results. So I guess we'll take a look. First one, Enrique 3D, someone who is very commonly known within our Genie vlogger family, and they posted this before, so you can see an entire breakdown of everything. And they've tested on a lot of places. Genera, which is a Brazilian-based DNA testing company, MyHeritage, obviously, Living DNA, Genome Link, Eurogenes, K13 and K36, the Mod WK10. So these three are coming from GEDmatch. Mundo DNA, which I think is one of the other South American ones, I believe. Tell Me Gen, we talked about before, Family Tree DNA, and then Documental. So what, based on the actual family tree that he knows, based on the document, what he would expect. So looking at that first, Sub-Saharan, 6.3% he'd expect, quarter Portuguese, 13.3% Italian, 0.8% French Swiss, 1.6% native Brazilian. So a lot of unknown in there as well. So we're not going to look at all of it, I don't think, but let's look over here at MyHeritage. So we have the old, and now we have the update, just what happened. So before, he had 3.8% Kenyan, 2.9% Nigerian, with 11.3% general North African. So all of that kind of lumped together as African. Then 8.7% Iberian, 42.4% Italian, 0.8% England, 13.7% Ireland, Scotland, Wales, 7% Balkans. So all of that stuff, obviously, he had, just for his European that he knew, Portuguese and Italian, and then a little bit of French Swiss, but getting, where were we? But getting a lot of other stuff too. So, I mean, the Iberian obviously makes sense. Sardinian, Italian makes sense. Western European, not so much. But then obviously has a lot of unknown. All right. Oh, wait. Oh, that's Genera. Sorry. But kind of same thing what I was saying. Okay. 8.7% Iberian, 42.4% Italian, 0.8%. Yeah. And then for the native, 9.4%, which he's expecting 1.6% native. So, okay. So this is the old. And now the new, 1.6% Central African, 94.4% Portuguese, 4% Northern Italian. Super different. Super different. Now, these were the communities from before. Didn't list any on this time. I'm not sure is Enrique in the chat. I don't know if I saw Enrique in here earlier. I'm trying to see. Yeah, I don't know. Don't think so. But yeah, just interesting. And let's see, what were the comments? Yeah. Okay. Yeah, nothing. He didn't comment anything about it. But yeah, just very interesting. And then I might as well just say reviewed. Save. Okay, then Majestic Bum 777, our Twitch Twitch representatives. So let's take a look. I don't know if they're still in here. Hopefully, I see a few people on Twitch. So, oh, but this is 23andMe, isn't it? Oh, okay. Okay. Well, we'll just look at it real quick. Dominican results. But okay. So yeah, Dominican results. Southern European, that's Spanish, Portuguese, Northwestern European, French, and German. Interesting. Then the typical 0.5% Ashkenazi Jewish, 0.4% broadly European, and then 15.9% sub-Saharan. And then I get the feeling that there's a second part. And then, yeah, indigenous American, and then Western Asian. So, yeah, okay. So, Dominican results. All right, but what we want to focus on, we want to focus on the new results, MyHeritage results. Okay, so we've got a few here. Okay, there we go. All right, so let's open that and then open that. Okay, so 62.8% Scandinavian, 37.2 English, and then here 100% Norwegian. Now I'd be interested to see what their low confidence level would be, if that English would come back or not. And then, yeah, do you have known English ancestry? That's the real question. Yeah, unlike Enrique's, we don't have something to compare what they were expecting. So if they were expecting English, then obviously this is worse. But if they weren't expecting English, then I would think it's better, especially all of their communities are Norway, except for this one that's Eastern Norway, Southwestern Sweden, and Denmark. But yeah, so interesting. Let's see. Is there a link to your Reddit discussion group? Yeah, there should be in the description below. But if not, I can also, although I'm in the old version, but people can, same difference, post a link in chat. Okay. See, hi, the MyHeritage updates were terrible. I restored my old results instantly. Now I know why people dislike their MyHeritage results. My old results were super accurate. Interesting. All right. Well, that's not what I wanted. There we go. Okay, so let's take a look at some of these others. So the new update. But we don't have anything to compare it to. Let's see what I say in here. Okay. Yeah, unfortunately, not really giving us enough info to go off of, but I mean, they say one side Louisiana, one side Texas, other side Kentucky, other side Kentucky and Virginia. So just American, which doesn't tell us a whole lot, other than the fact that, yeah, I mean, this is really interesting, though, just considering that it looks like that they're African American, but with an interesting Jewish reading and Portuguese reading. And wait, are we seeing it all? Am I missing? Shouldn't there be a third? Or is that all of it? Is that all of it? Because we've got these genetic groups down here at the bottom. Netherlands, Germany, and England. Huh. What does that add up to? Let's see. That's 4, 7.7, 9.9, 13.2. Yeah, okay. All right, weird. All right, so I mean what it looks like is this would be someone who uh largely African ancestry, huge chunk being Nigerian, which I guess we'd have to find out from them, do they have recent ancestry in Nigeria or not? But based on what they say here, one side Louisiana and Texas, the other side Kentucky and Virginia, that tells me that that must be African American. And with these results, we have 3.7% Portuguese, and then we have Jewish adding up to be about 4%, which I think there's a question of, does all of this come together, the Portuguese, the Ashkenazi Jewish, and all that come together to represent one ancestry, or is there multiple ancestries? Now, one thing that is very well known is that there were Jewish slaveholders in the South. And so it could be possible that that's where this is coming from. It's also possible that it could be coming from a consensual relationship as well, especially if we're considering if all of this is coming together. Let's say maybe, from my experience with these type of my heritage tests, I haven't gotten a lot of the updates yet, but I wouldn't be surprised if this might be representative of Sephardic Jewish ancestry or something like that, and thus would be lumped together. That would be about 7.7% DNA, which then would put it into the distance of about a second great-grandparent, even possibly a great-grandparent, somewhere between a great-grandparent and a third great-grandparent, which would be largely post-slavery, especially if we're talking great-grandparent or second great-grandparent. So that would mean that it would be a non-slaveholder enslaved relationship sort of thing, but a post, which maybe consensual, maybe not. I don't know. You never know with these things, I guess. But based on these results, yeah, that'd be very interesting. The other thing too is that the Portuguese is representative of something else in their ancestry, and the Ashkenazi Jewish is representative of something different. So I'd be very interested to see what this person has to say in terms of their ancestry. Okay, based off my friend. Okay, they posted it at My Heritage. Let's see. Yeah, they just don't tell us what they're expecting. Request failed. Okay. I'm looking at this though. My first DNA test results. Took it back, posted my results last. Yeah, so I mean, African American. Oh, I responded. Oh wait, no, I didn't respond. He responded on. I see the Genie Vlogger name. That's what I thought too. But when I saw people from Mid and South America on YouTube showing their DNA results, was odd to me. The highest I saw was no more than 3%. So my Jewish ancestors definitely didn't come from an old Mexican DNA, especially since my Jewish DNA is higher than my Native American and Spanish ancestors. Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. This person I definitely Ken Twain, Will Hawk. Okay, I definitely remember their name. I definitely remember this person's name. So interesting. Yeah, this is very interesting results. All right. let's go back. Blair reviewed, save. Okay, let's look at what we got going on. Good evening, John, one of our wiki treers. Thank you for joining. Thank you for joining. So, okay, and then yeah, I don't see. I'm trying to keep my eye on chat, everybody. So if you do have questions, please let me know. Okay, well, isn't that so wonderful? Let's ban user and delete all their comments. Jeez. Okay. I'm stuck on my family tree on Ancestry Scandinavian on my dad's side. Yeah, Scandinavian's tough with all those patronymics. I mean, Hans Peterson, Peter Hansen, Hans Olsen, Ola Peterson. Yeah, just crazy. Um, okay, let's see. All right, let's just get back to this. I just see people chatting with each other. So, all right, comparing more my heritage results. All right, let's look at. Okay, so the updated results. So we have the updated results. So let's see, old results. English, Irish, so very typical Northwestern, but with a 2.1% Eastern European and a 0.8% Middle Eastern. Interesting. And then with the new Scottish and Welsh, now a big chunk Germanic, 16.9% Irish, 5.3% Danish, 4% Dutch, 3.6% Breton, 2.5% Baltic. And then additional genetic groups, we have different northeastern and what midwestern USA, northeastern midwestern USA, and we're looking low confidence. This person did low confidence. So when you do the low confidence, this is them basically giving you their most grandiose of ideas of what it might be, but the confidence obviously is lower that this is the case. So if you notice this slider right here, that helped you change that confidence. So interesting. So Danish, Dutch, Breton, Baltic, and before just very, very plump. So the German seems to have come out of a lot of that English. And for the Eastern European, I guess that kind of fell into the Baltic, maybe. So, yeah, all interesting. So now try doing genealogy with both endogamy and patronymics. Well, I am. It's called Ashkenazi Jewish genetic genealogy. Okay. Duran Childs, why my heritage and ancestry have me 25% Iberian, but family DNA has me as 20% Greek. The sites are just defining it all differently for you for whatever reason. It's always hard to tell which, who's wrong, why are they, but I mean, it could go either way. That's the difficulty of these tests. And it's one of the reasons why people get even more confused when they test at multiple sites, because it's just each site kind of making their own scientific guess, but it's still just a guess. It's an estimation. There is some, reasoning behind it. But I say this a lot because I just love love the imagery that I think it paints. But when you're doing when you're doing a DNA test to get your ethnicity admixture, all you're really getting is a kind of blurry image, a blurry portrait of your family tree. So it'd be kind of like asking somebody asking somebody to paint a portrait of you. And then you go to another person, you ask them to paint a portrait of you. Both portraits are going to generally look like you, One may look way more like you than the other. One may be really, really realistic. The other may be really terrible, but they're both going to look different. And that's the same thing with these DNA tests with their ethnicity admixtures is when you test it one, they're just painting this blurry portrait of your ancestry where, yeah, you can kind of tell, this might be European, Northwestern European, Britishish or whatever. This one maybe Southern European, I don't know. But then other stuff like, well, I don't know. Is it Spanish? Is it Iberian? Is it Italian? Is it Greek? It seems to be correlated somewhere along there, but we don't know. Okay, we'll just put it like this. And so that's kind of, I don't know. Hopefully that explains maybe why it comes out like that is just they're all guessing it differently. They're all using different data to figure it out. So, if you look at the general results and you think of it, especially regionally, a lot of times it'll kind of make sense when you look at each test from the other. But also one of the reasons why a lot of people are so negative about MyHeritage is because when they compare all the tests, it often comes out that MyHeritage is the largest outlier in difference based on the others, and especially what people know of their family trees. So that's why I think so many of us are really hopeful for this rollout for the update on MyHeritage. Okay. Daniel, oh, I'm super late evening. Yes, yeah, you are late. It's actually, I don't know how much longer I'll go a little bit longer, but thank you for joining. Always wonderful to have you. We'll watch from the top at 1.5 speed. Good luck. I'm not sure if you'll catch up to us in time. So by the time you see me saying this, assuming you've already started the 1.5 speed at the beginning, it may be over. So I don't know. We'll see. Yeah, our all these tests have a certain amount of bad reads too. These bad reads are probably different between the tests, which could throw off some ethnicity estimations. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of things to consider when looking at this stuff. First off, the first error that can happen is reading all of the DNA. An autosomal SNP test tests usually about 700,000 SNPs or so. SNP basically just being a fancy terminology to mean a specific spot in your DNA. And, with a 1% margin of error on these tests and 700,000 plus SNPs being read, that's an error rate of 7,000 SNPs at least being read incorrectly. Then add on top of that, once you start trying to figure out what segment's coming from what side, because now that you have all of the DNA, you have to figure out what's coming from mom, what's coming from dad. And that's what's known as phasing. But without mom or dad to compare, phasing can be done incorrectly. And so you may get segments that look like one thing, but really aren't that because it's a mixture of DNA you inherited from mom and dad. And then once you get past those issues, then you also get just the general issue of how well does their actual algorithm read the DNA. So there's a lot of steps where errors can happen and thus expand the throw off the ethnicity estimate. PZ, do you know why they have subdivided Ashkenazi Jewish into 3 different regions? Ashkenazim cluster together, the subgroup that matches my paper trail and genetic groups came out very low. I think they're just trying to figure out any way that might be able to give people a hint as to where that certain ancestries may come from. I don't know how reliable the breakdowns really are. They've had that kind of for a while, the various Ashkenazi Jews from Ukraine, Russia, Belarus, Moldova, and then Ashkenazi Jews from Romania, Moldova, Ukraine, whatever, Poland. And I don't know how well they actually do it, but my guess is it's just kind of it's part of the process. They've found enough confidence to be able to, okay, maybe we can split it up into these various countries, but when you look at it, there's still a ton of overlap. So part of it too is that all of these companies are trying to be unique amongst all the other companies and get it so that people want to test with them. And so that's part of it. If they can be the company that can do that, people will want that, even if the reliability might not be quite as there as a lot of us would hope. How long will it take to roll out? I don't know. I wish I knew. I've been constantly checking all the kits that I run on MyHeritage. I said it at the beginning of the stream that only one out of all of the many kits I manage on MyHeritage has been updated so far. And that's a variety of kits that were both done through MyHeritage as well as uploaded, and of various ancestries and stuff. I think the only commonality between the majority of my MyHeritage testers that I manage the DNA test for is they're all located in the US, but all over the US. Like a bunch of my YouTuber family tree series testing, we had people testing through MyHeritage. So, okay. Michelle Chandler, general question. How far back is it possible to prove, disprove, / make an argument for paternity based on genetics? I don't know how well I could answer that question, honestly. I think it'll vary depending on the DNA test you do. If you just say genetics, then technically with Y DNA testing or mitochondrial DNA testing, I think that, you're looking at hundreds of years, if not thousands of years. And that's already been proven. The Richard the third with the mitochondrial DNA, they were able to pretty confidently identify him. And, whatever, just show that it doesn't matter. So, but they were able to figure that out through mitochondrial DNA. So obviously hundreds of years. But I think when it comes to proving / disproving, part of the difficulty is genetics can't be used alone. So it really also depends on other factors. With Richard III, I think part of it is that, royalty with so much documentation about him that there was, there were other things that they had to rely upon. First of all, it's not like they just picked it out of a hat of where to start digging. They had records indicating this may be where he's buried. Then using that, they found the sarcophagus with his body, and then used multiple ways to try to prove that it was him. So it is kind of a tough question. I definitely say hundreds of years, but if we're talking about just genetics alone, I don't think you can. But I certainly think thousands of years is definitely a possibility with mitochondrial and Y DNA. Now, for autosomal DNA testing, which is your typical Ancestry DNA, 23andMe, MyHeritage, that stuff, that I think you're really limited to 200, 300 years, maybe. Unless unless in certain cases with a lot of DNA testers, or a very old generation DNA tester that maybe, is much older than the typical tester, maybe you're looking at like 400 years or so at the extent, but not that far with that testing. So hopefully that was helpful. All right. I don't know how much longer I'm going to keep going, but we'll see. We'll just keep keeping on. Okay. Yeah, I started my tree. I have a distant cousin that's a genealogist. My family tree from my parents to my fourth great grandparents are just endogamous AF. Yeah. Yeah, definitely understand that. It's not uncommon. Unfortunately. Yeah, that's one other thing. Not only that, but also these companies do not test the entire genome, only part of it. So one company might be seeing one part while the other another, I guess. No, that's a very good point. In fact, with all of the different DNA testing companies, they're all testing about 700,000 autosomal SNP markers, the markers in your DNA, but they're not all testing the same amount. Now, there's a huge amount of overlap. As to how much that overlap is, I don't know. But just to use a general number, let's say, out of 700,000 SNPs, almost all the companies maybe have an overlap of like 600 to 650,000 of those. So it's like the large majority, they are testing the same amount. But then you might have, MyHeritage that has, 70,000 unique SNPs that only they test and none of the other companies test. And then there's 20,000 that only they test in Ancestry tests. And that, so it's like some companies have overlap where they're both testing that, but not all of them are. And, so it's like this weird hodgepodge of stuff. And this is one of the reasons why if you go on to gedmatch.com and buy tier 1, you can get what's known as the super kit tool. And what the super kit tool is where you've tested at multiple sites. So not just up testing at one site and then uploading to other sites, but let's say you did an actual test with Ancestry, then you did an actual test with MyHeritage, then you did an actual test with 23andMe and an actual test with Family Tree DNA, and then you uploaded all of those to GEDmatch. You can then create a super kit of all of those. So, maybe, each kit has about 700,000 SNPs tested, but when you create a super kit, now all of a sudden you're looking at over 800,000 SNPs tested with all of them together. So that's why super kit is there, because on GEDmatch, you're comparing your kit from Ancestry to kits from Family Tree DNA and 23andMe and sites like Outro, or not Outro, the Genera from Brazil, and 23 Mafong, and WeGene, and anyone can really upload a GEDmatch. So yeah, that's definitely a big part of it. And as whole genome sequencing gets more and more common for people to do, as soon as one of these sites takes that into account to allow autosomal matching that encompasses much more of your DNA, there's all sorts of things we might be able to find out that we didn't realize before. Now, one of the reasons why these sites only test a very small percentage of your entire genome is because, as we all already know, most humans are largely alike. I think it used to be the convention would be, most humans share 99% of the same DNA or something like that. I feel like I remember seeing something that said actually, it's more like 97% or something. But still, so the idea being that the large majority of our DNA, when we compare it to other people, it'll be exactly the same. It's not going to really tell us anything to be able to distinguish genealogically. Okay. My question is, you as a genealogist, why does MyHeritage in particular get so many way off ethnicities and continentals for African Americans and African results so out of place? I really, I wouldn't know. One of the biggest downsides with MyHeritage is that they don't release a white paper with their results. And the white paper is how we would be able to know how their results are coming about, where there are certain spots where maybe they're not as strong in reading, the confidence isn't as strong as other parts. So if you go to Ancestry or 23andMe, you can pull up the white papers. They show all the stuff behind it. MyHeritage doesn't do that. So unfortunately, I wouldn't know. Now, I do have to say, having said that, even if they had released the white paper, that's kind of getting out of my area of expertise. Well, I do, I know a whole lot about these tests and a lot more than the layman. This is kind of getting into the area of when you're looking at, well, what is it that's causing their tweak, their reading to skew this way or that way? That's where you really need to get someone who's more of a geneticist, who knows like that really in-depth like plot chart mapping and things like that. It's like, I know enough of that to get by and kind of read a white paper and kind of generally understand it, but I definitely am not anyone that could speak on it in any sort of authority. So hopefully that hopefully that tells you a little bit of something, just at least in the fact of they don't release the white paper. But yeah, sorry, I can't really, not much help with that, unfortunately. Is Giskin Einar's daughter Viking Viking name? I don't know. It might be, might not. I mean, it certainly sounds Scandinavian, but I really wouldn't know, unfortunately. All right, let's jump through some of these. I think I'm gonna get ending this not too soon. Savannah Lee, I've taken a 23andMe test and I have 16.4% broadly Northwestern European, which seems like a rather larger percentage to generalize. Not too large of a, I mean, it's not super uncommon, especially if, let's say you're coming from a family where, you do have a lot of mixture of, you have Irish ancestry and English ancestry and Scottish ancestry and Danish ancestry and Scandinavian and German and French. If you're a big European mutt of Northwestern European, it's going to make it very difficult for them to decipher. A big part coming from what's known as phasing, what I mentioned a little bit before, where they need to figure out what DNA is coming from mom's side, what DNA is coming from dad's side, and they can't always figure it out. And sometimes they're accidentally, mixing up DNA you inherited from mom and dad and making it seem like, oh, well, this must have come from one parent, and it looks like something other than what it really is because it's not correct. So that could be it. But yeah, 16.4% for a broadly reading isn't too untypical. I feel like I've seen broadly readings in like the 30 percentile and stuff like that. But my guess is if you're getting something like that, you're probably getting a lot of readings of general Northwestern European stuff like England, Ireland, Scotland, Wales, Scandinavia, and French and German sort of stuff. Let's see. Sorry, I just tuned in. Did you answer questions about how far back genetics make a difference in your own DNA? Sephardic Jewish DNA or Sardinian? Well, I guess make a difference in your own DNA. I'm going to assume what you're asking is that you're asking how far back are these DNA tests reliable for your ancestry? So like, if you do an ancestry DNA test, how far back is it really going to tell you? And in that case, it's probably going to be, I always like to say about 200 to 300 years. Some people will say 300 to 500 years. Usually you find something somewhere between that. And generally what it is that it's based on the fact of where can you reliably distinguish where your DNA is coming from. And that starts to end right around a fourth, fifth cousin distance. So bringing that DNA at the bottom, you can see how much DNA are you inheriting from ancestors at a specific ancestry distance, assuming recombination was perfect, meaning every generation you got 50% of this and 50% and 50%. So it was 50% exactly from your parents, then 25% from the grandparents, 12.5 from the greats, etc. Now it doesn't work like that. You could end up getting 20% from grandma, 30% from grandpa, and then it gets all skewed. But basically, once you get back to a fourth great grandparent level, that's where you've reached the point where there is a higher possibility that there are ancestors of yours that are your fourth great grandparents, but you inherit no DNA from them. And so that's why that limitation is often, 200, 300 years or 200 to 500 or somewhere in there. Because for most people, for most people that are about my generation as a millennial or so, your fourth great grandparents are going to be born end of 1700s, beginning of 1800s. So about 200 or so years ago. Now, fourth great grandparents is really where you get into the first generation that it's much more common. There is always a possibility you might have second great grandparents where you inherited no DNA. But that's kind of more of an anomaly and a little bit of an outlier. But that's why we say about 200 to 300 years. But sometimes obviously it could be even more distant than that because, there's some families where, let's say that, your parents had you when they were in their 50s and their parents had them when they were in their 50s and their parents had them when they were in their 50s. And then that means that you had like great grandparents born at the beginning of the 1800s. It's like, what is it? There were two presidents. I want to say it was Tyler and, is it Knox or Polk? But there were two presidents that have like grandsons who are still alive today, and those presidents died like over 100 years ago or something. So it's like, it depends more on the generations. But if you're talking years, that's the general kind of, yeah. Okay. Let's jump forward. Brian Nash from How We Got Here Genealogy. Thank you for joining. Just got here late again. I need to remember to add you to my calendar. The notifications don't always seem to work. Yeah, actually, the last one I did on the last week, the last stream, it actually wasn't doing the right notification through Discord. We have like a bot on our Discord that automatically notifies when that gets created. But I'm also not always the greatest with putting these up in time. So this one, I think I only got up like an hour before I started. So it wouldn't, generally every Friday I'm generally streaming somewhere starting between 2 and 4 o'clock, going to, depending on when I start. I feel like I go for 2 hours most of the time. So, but thank you for joining now, late or not. Dubois, I am Dutch and Asian, but from the test we did, all of my family members have 1 to 5% Native American DNA. How? Interesting. My guess is that has to do with the Indonesian DNA, just because, being in, Southeast Asia, you're dealing with a distant correlation to Native Americans, but Native Americans have an not Eastern European, an Eastern Asian connection. So it's very common for people that have Native American DNA or Native American ancestry, to then get Eastern Asian DNA results, not meaning they have East Asian ancestry. So I think this could possibly be that, just the opposite way. So because you have Asian ancestry, it's just being misread as Native American DNA, and this could be happening to multiple members of your family. And part of that could also be being that if you're Dutch Indonesian, you have that mixture of both the European and the Asian. And if phasing is getting really confused, sometimes that's what happens, is it just, gets some sort of a mixture where it makes it seem like it's something that it's not. So that could be why, but yeah, hard to tell for sure. Okay, my wife's Jewish or half Jewish ancestor migrated from Germany just after World War One. Are there any English language databases to try to find his relatives who stayed behind in Germany? No DNA test here. Now, no DNA testing, obviously, I guess we won't talk about that then. But for English language databases, Family Search is a great place to just start to, build out the family tree. But if you're trying to find relatives who are online, the one site that's coming to my mind is GenieNet. Even though GenieNet is a French-based company, I feel like a lot of Europeans are on it. Also genie.com, that has a lot of people who are European. So maybe those would be helpful. But yeah, if you do DNA test, MyHeritage would be the way to go for that. Yes, thank you. That's exactly what I was asking. Wonderful. Okay, let's see. I think I'm only going to do like a handful more of questions. Okay, Praveen Prabhaharan. I've got a father-son match on Ancestry. I share 87 centimorgans with the son, who's a third cousin twice removed, and 86 centimorgans with the father, who's a second cousin 3 times removed. Does this mean I must be related to the son's mother too? No, not exactly. There's a few things to consider with this. First of all, are you coming from an endogamous population? Because if that is the case, then it could just be that this person's an endogamous match. Let me turn the banner off. There we go. The other possibility is that just because of the oddity of the reading of the DNA test and all of that, you and your father are sharing the same amount of DNA with this person. It's just for you, they ended up reading it 87 centimorgans. For him, they read it at 86 centimorgans, which when you're looking at a 1 centimorgan difference, there's really not that much. And it's on Ancestry, so you're not going to be able to do the comparison. But if this person, these cousins, this father and son, have uploaded to maybe GEDmatch, MyHeritage, or Family Tree DNA, if you upload there, you can do a comparison and look at your chromosome browser and see, is the segment that you and your father are sharing with these, or not you and your father, is the segment that you're sharing with this father and son the same segment spot, which I'm guessing it is. And it's just, it could just be the randomness of recombination. So the one good thing is that being that you have the father tested, you're going to want to focus that 87 cent or that reading more on the father. So, with 86 centimorgans, We're looking at all of these possibilities, but our highest possibilities, pretty even across the board, honestly, here. But yeah, falling very, very well well within range. Now you say third cousin twice removed and a second cousin third times removed. And then you ask, does this mean I must be related to this son's mother too? I'm guessing that means how you're related to this person. You're not just saying third cousin twice removed because Ancestry says that, because I don't think Ancestry really gives that as a yeah, this is how you're related. They would have said a fourth to fifth cousin. So I'm guessing exactly how you're related. So with all of that said, the way I'm going to leave it is, I don't think it means that you must be related through this son's mother too, but it is a possibility. The way to see, if you look at your chromosome, if you look at the chromosome browser and you see, oh, actually, my father or the father has this, 87 centimorgans that's matching, but it's actually different segments than what this, or the son's matching different segments than what you are matching the father. That would be the indication that, yeah, you're going to be related through the mother too. Hopefully that makes sense. Okay, let's jump through this. We have a few hellos. Hello, Brian. Hello, Anna. Thank you for joining. I think I'm only going to be answering maybe one or two more questions. I'm pretty close to being done. Here's an interesting one, a little different. Much more, Matt. How do I go about hiring a professional genealogist? How much do they cost, and who do you recommend? Now, going about hiring a professional genealogist, there's a few things to consider, and that's going to change how you go about it. The first thing is, what are you trying to hire the genealogist for? So that could be a variety of reasons. A lot of people just want to hire a genealogist because they go, I want to know about my family tree. I don't even know how to start. I just want you to build as much as you can. And with that, you can really find almost anybody to get that started for you. And yeah, I don't know. There wouldn't be much in terms of what you'd be looking for. Now, the other thing is if you have more specific questions. So maybe it's not just build my family tree. Maybe it's, I'm trying to figure out this line that goes to Italy. I can't figure out how to find records in Italy. Well, then you're going to need to look for genealogists who specialize in those records. Now, the cost of a genealogist can vary greatly. So on your low end, you can find, I think you can find a good amount of genealogists who are willing to do work at, $20 an hour, $30 an hour. That's kind of, I think, the lower end of things. You may be maybe even able to find some people that are willing to do it even cheaper. I think I remember I see genealogists on Fiverr and Upwork and stuff like that. Don't know how well they do in there. I did a little bit of work on Fiverr, I think, in my beginning of genealogy career, and I quickly gave it up. But that's the low end. The medium end, I want to say, for cost, you're usually looking at somewhere between $40 to $80 an hour, and the range there is really going to depend on expertise, availability, and certification, things like that. And then when you get into the high end of stuff, you're looking at $80 up to, some genealogists charge $200 an hour, but when you're looking at some of those genealogists are charging, hundreds of dollars an hour, these are a lot of genealogists that are very specialized and often specialized in areas that are not cheap to live. So like if you're trying to hire a New York genealogist to be researching in archives in New York, you're usually looking at a higher end cost of genealogist. Now, how to find a genealogist, there's a few ways to go about it. You can just kind of look up certain genealogy stuff and see what are the big genealogists doing it and see if they are hireable. Another way to go about it is you can go to the Association of Professional Genealogists website. That's apgen.org. And they just rolled this out, which is, help in finding a genealogist, and they kind of have a whole bunch of stuff to look into. And so you can, what are you looking for? DNA, family history research, any keywords. So, okay, so let's say family history research, and let's say you're looking for German. Yeah. Okay. So German. And let's say that you want someone in Germany because you need them to go on the ground, you want them based there. And then researches in Germany. Just start, and then you get a list. Now the other option, this is AP Gen, but there's more than AP Gen. You can also look under, I think, the Board of Certification of Genealogists. They have a directory. Now, the thing with anyone who, or any of the certification genealogists, they're always going to be on the higher end of cost because it's a lot of time and money to get certified. And that's kind of part of why you do it, is because you get that, and it kind of gives you the bump up to charge people more and have a reason behind it. So yeah. And then who do you recommend? It's hard to recommend anybody without knowing what you're looking for. So, if you were looking for specific stuff, I might be able to recommend people. And I know I get people who ask all the time in the chat about, I'm trying to look into this or that, and I'll have specific people. Like I remember last time there were people asking about German translations. So I talked about Uta Brandenburg and Catherine. Oh my gosh, why did I just blank on her name? Why did I just blank on her name? Catherine Schober. There we go. Catherine Schober. I recommended them. So it really, really, really depends. So I think, okay, yeah. So Brian, yeah, I charge $65 an hour plus expenses, but all Canadian, so a deal for Americans. Yeah. And often when you're looking for very specialized research, you're going to expect to pay more, but part of what you're paying for is that expertise, the years and years and years of it. And when you have someone that looks at a record who's not used to that, researching in those records, there may be a lot of things that researcher misses just because they aren't familiar with it. And by having someone who is familiar with it, it can be very useful. I've hired genealogists myself, and professional genealogists hire other professionals all the time because we can't be everywhere. So I've hired a lot of genealogists, especially in Ukraine. Sergei Fazulyanov was a researcher I hired who helped me research in Tolchin in Vinnytsia Oblast in Ukraine. And I am so happy I hired him because not only did he find the stuff I asked for, but on top of that, because he knew the records, he actually helped me uncover a whole branch of the family that I didn't realize was there, because he said, well, based on the names that you gave me, I also found these other people in the records that seem to be connected and must be family in some way. You don't have a researcher that knows what they're doing, you may miss out on those opportunities. So, yeah. But yeah, genealogy is most fun when doing it yourself. Yeah, I mean, that's yeah. True. Genealogy is so much fun to do. So, all right. Well, I think with that, I'm going to end it there. I really, really appreciate everybody for joining this week. Next week, we'll have to figure out what we're going to do for the live stream. I'm really hoping to have my next video coming out soon. Unfortunately, there were some last minute edits that I needed to do to it for privacy reasons. So, I was hoping to get it out this weekend, but don't know if that's going to happen now. We'll just have to cross our fingers and see. But obviously, there'll be a new reaction on Monday. But 2 weeks from now, we'll do another one of these answering questions streams. So thank you so much to everybody for joining. Be sure to like, subscribe, comment, do all the things, whatever. But yeah, have a wonderful Friday, a wonderful weekend, and I will see you all next time. I am